Since early 1970, I have found myself dealing with journalists and editors, not always by choice, nor by desire. For the most part, I have found them unscrupulous, dishonest, and unreliable. There are notable exceptions. They, unfortunately, are in the minority, but one of those exceptions I found to be Derek Jameson, whom I had a good rapport, and admittedly we were doing a light-hearted interview, to some extent at least, where my bloodline to Lord Byron was every bit as important to him as anything else. But nonetheless, we had an amicable and pleasant relationship from start to finish, unlike a lot of television presenters and newspaper editors.
That's one Jameson Tonight. There's plenty of bloodsuckers hereabouts, I can tell you. Here's a man who's been pursuing them professionally for 23 years. Ladies and gentlemen, Britain's #1 vampire hunter, Seán Manchester. Hey, Seán, you do look a treat, mate. Don't you? Fantastic. I mean, this is Lord Byron, who I believe was, you're a descendant of...
My great-great-great-grandfather.
Really?
Yes.
And was he into vampires?
No, he detested them. He found them an abomination. Unfortunately, he's ever since been the archetype for the Hammer horror style of vampire.
Yeah.
The Christopher Lee, the Frank Langella vampire is based on Lord Byron, which must have him spinning in his proverbial grave.
You don't think he was into that himself?
Not at all.
That Caroline
he was extremely superstitious of anything which went bump into the night.
Yeah, I suppose they all were in those days.
Although he was the cause of a few bumps in the night, I must add.
Yeah, you could say that. Sure, what does a vampire hunter do?
Well, you might be surprised to learn that he hunts vampires. Largely in the dead of night. That's the simple answer.
But not with the old stake and the mallet.
Ultimately, if necessary. Though with today's laws, I'm afraid surveillance and vigil is the majority of the research.
You've not had any luck in pinning them down, has it?
Twice I've pinned two. The problem is that the Saxons introduced the law which enabled us to dispatch vampires in the ancient and approved manner. But in 1823 that law was repealed and we can no longer legally transfix vampires with the stake. Not at least in hallowed ground or in places where it would be frowned upon.
So what do you do, Seán? There you are in the middle of the night in Highgate Cemetery and you come upon a vampire.
As I did.
As you have done, yes, yes. Who was that? Who was it?
It was an 18th century nobleman who came to this country before the cemetery itself existed and leased a house which was Ashurst House in Highgate, which is where the church St Michael's now stands, and the grounds of Ashurst House are now the cemetery, and that's the Highgate vampire. And until that particular contagion moved, due to the publicity and due to my own investigations, to a neo-Gothic mansion on the borders of Highgate, I was unable legally to deal with it. And it was in that unearthly place that I truly released the tormented soul so that it might find a peace of death.
With the old stake?
Impalement.
Really?
And cremation.
You put in? And they was grateful to you, was it?
The residents of Highgate were relieved, to say the least.
Was it out at night doing things?
Yes.
To young ladies?
At the time of the contagion, my investigations ran into about 13 years approximately. And during that time, hundreds of animals, many of them domestic pets, were drained completely of blood.
Highgate?
Oh, yes.
I used to live there.
And neighbouring
That's in North London.
Oh, yes, indeed.
You mean to say there were vampires wandered about?
Yes, 20 years ago to the day almost.
Really?
Yes.
And at the Great Northern London Cemetery in Barnet, in Hertfordshire?
that was an infestation of which Highgate was the source, yes. Again, that was a vampire I dispatched with impalement, in its metamorphosed shape.
You're really giving me the wind, putting the wind up me. Is this true?
Absolutely. I mean, my book, The Highgate Vampire, records these cases with photographic evidence.
And do they scream when when you dispatch them, as you say? It's a funny word, isn't it?
What?
Dispatch.
When one deals with them and, as it were, remedies the undead contagion, there is a conglomeration of things happening.
Yeah, do they scream, mate? Never mind the conglomeration.
I must confess that on the occasion of the Highgate vampire being well and truly, as it were, exorcised, there were unearthly sounds in the wind. No doubt about that.
Do you get paid for it?
No.
Nobody pays you?
No, not directly. I mean, the Ministry of Exorcism is something which one can hardly charge for, but of course, films and documentaries and books and rights do follow.
That's right.
But directly, no charge is ever made for.
Source of public curiosity.
I mean, people worldwide do approach me to investigate what they suspect might be a vampire. One of your members of Parliament, not the aforementioned Sebco, no, has asked me to look into his residence up north.
Really?
Oh, yes.
Anybody we know?
Oh, yes.
What's his name?
A recent leader of a small political party who's been knighted.
Really?
Yes.
David Still. David Still.
I'm not saying.
Liberals.
I'm not saying, but
You can tell me, Sean.
I'm also looking into the case in West Yorkshire, which is as old as the 13th century.
Look here, Sean, I've got another case for you. Round here, they charge 120 quid for a bottle of shampoo and it's coloured water. Here's bloodsuckers for you.
Might agree.
There are hundreds of them in Soho. I will you here tonight. See what you can do.
I certainly will.
Ladies and gentlemen, a real vampire hunter. Today with me, Seán Manchester. Thank you, Sean. Mustn't be seen on the streets at midnight with Sean around. My thanks to all. We'll be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock, Sky 1. This is the last week of our run, of course. Say ah. And Big George Wembley is 33 today. It's his birthday. Happy birthday, George. We're featuring some of the boys in the band this week with their own groups before we go. Tonight, it's the sax player, Snake Davis. And here he is, Snake and the Charmers. What's up with you, Snake? Hey!